بسم الله. أول حاجة مرحبا بكل الأخوان والأخوات الحضور، وأكرر اعتذار مرة ثانية بالنسبة للتكنيكال جلitches اللي حصلت. مرحبا بكم في التاون هول اللي بتنظمه رابطة اتحاد الجاليات السودانية في كندا. الاتحاد ده أنشئ سنة 2020، تحديدا جولاي 1 2020، يعني سنتين وشوية تقريبا. الهدف منه كان التنسيق بين الجاليات السودانية المختلفة الموجودة في مختلف المدن والمقاطعات الكندية في الأنشطة اللي بنحس إنه ممكن الأخوان والأخوات السودانيين يستفيدوا. في عدد كبير من المدن، الجاليات السودانية في المدن المختلفة دخلت فيه. معنا الجالية السودانية في تورونتو، الجالية السودانية في ميسيساغا، هاملتون، سان كاثرين، لندن اونتاريو، وينيبيغ، ادمنتون، كالجاري، فانكوفر، اوتاوا، يعني من المؤسسين برضو، وفانكوفر. فكل الجاليات السودانية الموجودة في كندا إما انضمت تحت الاتحاد أو في طور الانضمام تحت الاتحاد. الهدف من الاتحاد زي ما ذكرنا سابقا يا شباب التنسيق بين الجاليات السودانية في الحاجات اللي احنا بنحس انه ممكن تكون مفيدة. الاتحاد عنده موقع على الانترنت موجود فيه كل المعلومات، التأسيس، الأهداف، جهات الاتصال. لكن بسرعة إذا كنت عاوز تتواصل مع الاتحاد عندنا الإيميل info@scca.ca، أو ممكن ترجع للموقع بتاعنا في الإنترنت، بتلقى معلومات كاملة وجهات الاتصال وما شابه. مجموعة من الأنشطة قام بها الاتحاد. يمكن مؤخرا الحاجة اللي سمعتوا عنها المتعلقة بالنسبة لبرنامج الهجرة لأسر الكنديين. الباشمهندس رانيا إنها تديكم باك جراوند عن الموضوع وعن البرنامج. شكرا جزيلا مرة ثانية لحضوركم.
طيب احنا محاولين نكون سريعين وما ناخذ من زمانكم كثير، بس أنا I'm trying to find my notes لأنه to be honest. اوكي طيب طيب شكرا لكم. أنا رانيا الفيل، جزء من SCCA سابقا كرئيس لجالية ميسيساغا، وحسي كجزء من GC أو Government Committee بتاعت SCCA. few points I just wanted to touch on عشان to clarify، لأنه كان في أسئلة كثيرة. إنه كانت الشغل ده تقريبا بدأ في April، أول بعد الحرب ما بدأت بفترة بسيطة جدا. if you remember كان في عدد من اللقاءات مع جزء من الوزراء في الفترة الأولى بعد الحرب. بدينا بلقاء مع منستر أحمد حسين ومنستر جولي وزيرة الخارجية، بالذات إنه الوقت ده كان التركيز على موضوع الإيفاكويشن. بعد ذاك مشينا لقدام وقدرنا نقابل وزير الهجرة at that time شون فريزر. الحاجة دي كانت الفائدة بتاعتها إنه من الكوميونيكيشن اللي حصل في الاجتماعات دي احنا basically we got a direct link مع مكتب وزير الهجرة. واللينك ده basically كانت الفكرة إنه من الاجتماع من الأول كان في commitment إنهم they want to do something for Sudan كويس، وإنه الناس تبدأ تتفكر إنه شكل البرنامج للسودان شكله عامل كيف. لما بدينا ببوليسي درافت، أنا متأكدة جزء كبير شافها كانت اتشيرت في الأول. البوليسي درافت دي احنا we ask for everything، برنامج مشابه للأوكران، حاجة قريبة اللي اتعملت للسوريين اللي بتتعمل through the UNHCR أنا family reunification program. and بالبروجرس بتاع الحاجات I think بالpressure on the liberals، مشاكل حصلت مع refugees و so many things I think happened created so many shifts during that time. وفي النهاية هم they decided is where they're gonna start is with the family reunification program. السبب برضو إنه هم بهمهم أول حاجة their citizens and residents هنا في كندا. and this program will allow الناس الموجودين في كندا their Canadian Sudanese residents and citizens to bring their loved ones and families من الحتة بتاعت الكونفليكت and will limit and lift المنتل impact الحاصل على الكوميونتي الموجودة في كندا. So they prioritize the family reunification program. أنا ما عارفة إذا أبو شريعة قدر يخش السيشن ولا لا، لأنه إحنا ضيوفنا الكرام الليلة معانا الأستاذ محمد مهدي، وهو محامي هجرة based out of Toronto، وكان المفروض يكون معانا أستاذ أبو شريعة من لندن أونتاريو، نشكرهم لزمنهم. معنا أستاذ عبير هي immigration consultant برضو based out of Toronto. عبير كانت في فترة من الفترات رئيسة الجالية في تورونتو، وبدت مع الناس في شغل الادفوكسي كجزء من الجي سي جروب. ومحمد مهدي is advising us recently، بالذات من البوليسي أول ما شيروها معانا and we had so many questions وكده. He is providing legal advice لنا، ونشكره جدا على زمنه، على his sort of time volunteering to help the community. So I'm going to pass it لمحمد مهدي. he will take us through the policy. كويس. بعد ذلك هيكون في Q&A session بالquestions الكابشرد من الأول. And yeah, that's going to be the focus for today. تفضل محمد.
Okay. شكرا رانيا. Okay. So, like Rania mentioned, this is a new public policy. It is a PR pathway. So, successful applicants will obtain the permanent residence in Canada. We are expecting the program to launch and come into effect February 27th, 2024. Okay, it will be an online application process. We believe a new portal will be established for all applications to be submitted online. The number of applications has been capped at 3,250 applications, okay? And the policy will be in effect for 1 year. If the cap of applications has been met, the program will be shut down, and there is a possibility for reopening or an extension for this application. الليلة أنا بس عاوز أتكلم معاكم عشان ال requirements, who is eligible, who can act as an anchor relative in Canada, and what are the requirements for those people. So, who is eligible to qualify for this program? أول شيء حاجة مهمة، الزول كان عايش وساكن في السودان في وقت الحرب في يوم 15/4/2023 معلش. So they are residing in Sudan on April 15th, 2023. Okay, we believe the program will will cater to only those people who are living in Sudan, not visiting. Okay, who are living in Sudan, their entire life, their their employment, their assets, all of it is in Sudan. Okay. The program will also apply to those people who left Sudan, okay, on or after April 15th. ومشوا بلد تاني. There's going to be a lot of discretion applied in this policy, but we believe the main requirement is going to be that this individual, if they left Sudan, then they obtained an إقامة في قطر, في السعودية, الخليج, في مصر, they will qualify. So they left Sudan on April 15th, 2023, and obtained a new residency or إقامة مؤكدة في الخليج, they will qualify. We believe that those who will not qualify are those who had already in possession of a residency.
Is okay.
Visa, residency visa, and were visiting Sudan and left, they will not qualify. Now, واحد طلع من السودان ومشى الخليج وعنده إقامة مؤكدة هناك في الخليج، كان الزول ده عنده جنسية تاني، they will not qualify. Okay, so this is really for those who have been directly affected with no other options to reside anywhere else in the world. Okay, so another nationality, another passport will not make them eligible. At the time of submitting the application, the individual or the families must be residing outside of Canada. Okay, there are some people who have come to Canada after the war started, and there is an exemption, or there is consideration for those, and I will get into those a little bit more. To qualify for this program, this individual or groups of people, they must be a child, grandchild, parent, grandparent, or sibling of a PR, permanent residence in Canada, or a citizen of Canada above the age of 18. Okay, so if you are a permanent resident in Canada or a Canadian citizen and above the age of 18, you will be able to apply as an anchor relative or sponsor for your child, any age. So for example, if you are a mother or father living in Canada and you have your PR or your Canadian citizenship, and your son or daughter was living in Sudan at the time of the war and left and is 35 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, you will be able to include them. You can also bring the grandchildren, your parents, grandparents, or siblings. One of the unique and very important features of this program is there is no cap on how many people you can bring. However, there are financial requirements, which I will get into. So it is open, okay, but the number of applications is capped. So for example, if you are trying to apply for your mother and your father, that will be one application, okay? If you're applying for your sibling above the age of 18, that sibling plus their children will be one application, okay? So there are caps in that regard. There are a lot of questions about, and a lot of issues have arisen about a lot of children who have been orphaned or lost their parents in the war. Okay, so if you have a brother or sister, for example, who have left children behind and who have passed away or are gone missing, you will be able to apply to bring their children here. From what we understand, there is no formal adoption process, documentation required. This is something that we will confirm further with IRCC, but as of right now, this is the understanding. When we're proving the relationship between the anchor relative in Canada and the person you are trying to bring, we expect them to provide the necessary and usual documentation to prove the relationship. So birth certificates, if you are siblings, for your parents. Sometimes these documents are not available to prove the relationship. Okay, so if you're trying to bring your brother or your sister or your parents and they left Sudan, and all of their documentation has been left behind or has been destroyed, there is consideration for this. And the IRCC will allow for statutory declarations, okay, to accommodate for this. So in the application, you will be required to provide a statutory declaration. And I would advise, I would recommend that all of, if you are considering that or need to consider that, you would need to speak with a notary or a commissioner in your respective area. Do not submit statutory declarations that are not commissioned or notarized, because this will just make it a piece of paper without any effect. So please have your statutory declarations notarized or commissioned. Okay. There will be, again, you can reach out to your local commissioners or notaries in your area, and they can take care of this for you. Another issue that we're seeing a lot since the war is a lot of people have lost their passports or unable to obtain their passports. Okay. One of the requirements is that these individuals who are coming from Sudan are in possession of a passport or a travel document. Okay. Now, IRCC has understood the effects of the war and how this has affected a lot of people and who don't have their passports anymore. And so they have provided consideration in the policy to provide another identity document. So from Sudan, you can provide your national ID, you can provide your, I believe, driver's license, and any other documentation you can obtain. Okay. When it comes to the actual visa issuing and travel to Canada, this is something that we will have to obtain from IRCC, information from IRCC to confirm exactly how they are going to process those visas and those travel documents. Okay. Make sure all of your documents are translated. This is a must, okay, by an accredited translator. And these will have to be submitted at the time of your application online. Okay. Now, to be clear, this is a very generous policy. Okay, it has been negotiated for many months, and there has been considerable amount of effort put into this. It is important that we respect the policy. So this does not apply to cousins, does not apply to neighbors. Okay, half siblings and half sisters. From our understanding, is that this will not apply to them as well. Okay. Okay. So just to recap and give an example, if you are in Sudan and you have been affected by the war and you left Sudan on or after April 15th, 2023, and you entered Egypt, entered the Gulf, Saudi, Qatar, Oman, and Emirates, and you obtained a new Iqama, you will qualify. Okay, you should qualify. Many people have gone to Egypt, approached the UNHCR for resettlement. This is very important. If you have approached the UNHCR and are waiting for resettlement, but have not been offered resettlement, those individuals will still qualify. Okay. If your family member has been offered resettlement, meaning the UNHCR has recognized them and has offered to settle them somewhere else in the world, even Canada, they will not qualify for this program. Okay. Now, I think the majority of people from Sudan probably have not reached that resettlement phase or offer of resettlement period, so it shouldn't affect too many people. But again, just to be technical, this is who is caught by this policy. Okay. Now, moving on to the anchor relative in Canada. So like I mentioned, you have to have your PR, your permanent resident status, you're a Canadian citizen, okay, and above the age of 18. Okay. This is also very important. The individual, the anchor relative, cannot have any criminal criminal convictions or issues. Okay, they will not accept someone who has a previous undertaking under a sponsorship and they have not fulfilled that. Okay, so for example, spousal sponsorships that have not been upheld. Okay, we are expecting IRCC to take a close eye on all of these technicalities. So I would pay very strong attention to these details when it comes to your eligibility as an anchor relative. Okay, and again, in your application online, you will be required to provide a copy of your permanent resident card, your passport, to prove your eligibility here. And again, the relationship documents. Okay. So what I would encourage, if there's a way to get documents translated now, start that process now. Sometimes translations can take some time. Please pay attention to the names, okay, in those documents as well. Okay. At the time of your applying, if you feel that there are other questions that come up with anything of this policy, I would advise you to speak to a legal representative at the time that you apply. Okay. So if you are a PR and you are a Canadian or a Canadian citizen above the age of 18, okay, there are financial requirements that you must meet. Okay. So IRCC has set out 3 options for financial requirement. Okay. So option number 1, you must have a minimum income. Okay. The minimum income will depend on how many people you are trying to sponsor or bring. Okay, and it will also depend on the population or the population in the area that you reside in. Okay, so for example, there is a I'm not sure, Rani, if this will be provided through the link, but this will definitely be available online at the time that the application has been launched. Okay, setting out the income requirements and the income cutoff. Okay, so if you are in an area, okay, I think for the most part in Canada, most areas most people are living in a population with more than 100,000. So I will focus on those 2, but there are requirements or different requirements for populations under 100,000, under 30,000. Okay. So if we're talking about 100,000 to 499,000, or let's say 500,000 in terms of population, if, okay, you want to sponsor 1 person, your income net, so after tax, your income must be $19,283. This is after taxes. Okay. If you are looking to bring 7 people or more, your income after tax has to be $50,568. Okay. This is for a population size of the place that you are residing in between 100,000 and 499,999 people. For populations over 500,000, minimum income for 1 person, to sponsor 1 person, will be $22,801 after tax. If you are planning to sponsor or bring 7 people or more, your income will have to be $59,794. And again, this will be laid out in a chart that will be available to everyone. But this is just to give you an idea of the minimum income requirements. And it varies. So for a population of 500,000, from 1 person to 7 persons and more, the income range will be from 22,800 to call it 60,000. Okay. You will have to provide your notice of assessment. We are expecting probably just a notice of assessment from the previous year, 2023. Okay. Okay. The second option to qualify financially will be to meet a minimum necessary funds requirement. Okay, so depending on the number of people you are applying for, you will have to have a certain amount of money held in an in-trust account in Canada, okay, at a financial institution, okay, and this money must be available to the foreign nationals or the people you are sponsoring once they are given the PR and have come to Canada. Okay, and again, these requirements will be available online. But for example, if you are applying for one person, the total funds required that have to be in your bank account or in this bank account for one person will be $9,900. Two people, $14,950. For three people, $16,500. For four people, $18,100. For five people, $20,450. And for six people, $22,650. For every additional person over six, okay, you will need to add $1,900 to that account. Okay, and so again, when you apply online, you will need to provide the bank statements to prove those funds are there. Okay. Now, these funds, from what we understand, these funds can be collected, okay, and by a group and be put into an account. So it doesn't, the funds don't necessarily have to come directly from one person. Okay, so there is some flexibility here as well for a community involvement to obtain these funds. So that would be option 2. So either you have a minimum income requirement or you possess the necessary funds in your bank account. And then option 3, of course, is a combination of both, of your income and the necessary funds. Okay. Okay. Now, to go back to some general questions about who can be brought here. Okay, the foreign national. So, for example, brother, sister, parent, grandparent. There is no. We've seen this question quite a bit. There is no exemptions or specifications dealing with those with disabilities. Okay, so there is no. Someone with a disability is not barred from applying and being brought over, but the usual inadmissibility provisions under the Act will apply. So, for example, if there is any medical inadmissibility, diabetes, high blood pressure, these will not trigger the inadmissibility. Okay, what IRCC is looking for, really, when they're talking about inadmissibility, is someone who will create a significant financial burden in Canada. Okay, so for example, if you have a brother who is completely paralyzed and is dependent on high level of care and medication, and this medication is very valuable, expensive, this care is very expensive, this could trigger medical inadmissibility. Okay, so we still have to pay attention to that. And again, this will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Transporting those with disabilities will fall on the anchor relatives or the family trying to bring them here. Okay, so if you have someone who is with a disability and needs special measures to be transported to Canada, those financial costs will not be absorbed by the Canadian government. To go back to the application itself, when we're applying online, this is again a permanent resident application. So the necessary or the usual PR or permanent resident requirements will be upheld or required. And this includes the police clearance certificate. Okay, so it's very important when you're submitting your application that you will need to be you will need to provide a police clearance certificate from Sudan. Okay. IRCC will provide more information about how that can be obtained, but from what I understand now, and I think this can be addressed a little bit more in detail later, but it looks like in Port Sudan, if you are outside of Sudan, in Port Sudan, there is a way to get a police clearance certificate. We believe this is probably going to be the biggest hurdle, the biggest delay in submitting these applications. So if this is something that you're able to start now in anticipation of this, I would recommend to start that process now. Again, I don't have the exact details about that, but that is something I think that might be touched upon a little bit later in the Q&A. Okay. And then of course the necessary biometrics will apply with some exceptions. We believe those below 14 will not be required to provide their biometrics, and above 70 will not provide biometrics. So under the age of 14 years and above the age of 70 years of age will not be required to provide their biometrics. So this is something that we have to obtain, okay, for those in between.
يا مو يعني this is تقريبا a quick overview around the policy. أنا حادي فرصة لأستاذ أبو شريعة من لندن. Thank you إنك أنت قدرت to join us إنه يعقب، وبعده حأفتح الفرصة لأستاذ عبير إنها تعقب، حتى بعد ذاك حنمشي لحتة الأسئلة. أنا شايفة الناس بتسأل في الجات، عايزة أذكرهم إنه إحنا حنلتزم مبدئيا بالأسئلة الجات اليومين اللي فاتوا already filtered من الكوميونتي. فأستاذ أبو شريعة تفضل.
شكرا رانيا، والسلام عليكم جميعا، ونترحم على أرواح من قتلوا في السودان بهذه الحرب البعثية. الحقيقة يعني أنا أشكر يعني اللاينس بتاع الجمعيات على هذا الجهد يعني جبار، وعلى الفولنتيرز أيضا لأنهم هم يعني الساقة الأساسية لهذه المسألة. لكن عندي، وأنا حتكلم بالعربي ما حتكلم بالإنجليزي، لكن عندي بعض الملاحظات بفتكر أنها ذات أهمية. أنا بفتكر أنه نحن محتاجين أننا نضغط أكثر، لأنه في حسب it is my understanding أنه الناس لسه المسألة فيها تشاور مع ناس الإيميجريشن، وبفتكر أنه نحن يعني لازم نضغط في اتجاه تحسين هذا الباثوي ليبقى مفيد لكافة السودانيين. وده لعدة أسباب. من ضمن هذه الأسباب أنه نحن in considering يعني الانكم بتاع السودانيين، بنجد أنه المسألة دي حيكون فيها صعوبة شديدة جدا في أنه to meet the requirements، لا بالطريقة بتاعت الانكم اسسمنت اللي هو بيجي من الضرائب، ولا بالطريقة بتاعت الفلوس اللي بتتحطها انترست بالنسبة للناس على حسب أفراد الأسرة. لأنه حسب البوليسي يعني الانكم بيتحسب على الشخص الموجود في كندا الانكر وأسرته زائد الشخص اللي مفترض يعني الابليكانت اللي هو مفترض الشخص يجيبه وأسرته. فده كله بيتحسب، ديل كلهم بيتحسبوا مع بعض، وبيتحسب عليهم يعني اللو انكم كات اوف حسب اللو انكم كات اوف اللي شرحه الزميل محمد. وده معناها يعني عدد افراد الاسره كل ما كبر كل ما بقى البيردن كبير جدا على الناس، وكل ما بقى من الصعب جدا انه تميت حتى by combining الانكم زائد التراست اكاونت اللي بتتحط فيه الفلوس.
الحاجه دي مفهومه، انا متاسفه اقاطعك لانه هو يعني I don't know this is basically a continuous effort من شهر 5. ف I just want to remind people ذاتهم المفروض يفكروا انه how they can maximize ده. إذا بدل ما تجيب أخوك بكل الفاميلي وأختك بكل الفاميلي you can bring your brother your sister، وبعدين هم بالبي آر حقتهم يجيبوا أهلهم. لكن الفكرة بتاعت إنه إحنا مثلا نرجع نقول للgovernment إنه because I want to bring 20 people لأنه I have my brothers and sisters and their families and give us more leverage on the financial aspect. to be honest, I think that is going to be difficult on the financial aspect لأنه هم مدينا flexibility by adding option B, option C. What we have and we are going to go back and advocate for موضوع الليميت بتاع الابليكيشن. We know إنه في leverage إنه that for that to be extended and we want to push إنه لو في طريقة الأرقام حقت الابليكيشن تزيد. لكن I think point taken around إذا في فرصة إنه الناس تحسن الشروط. But I just want to say إنه all this has been discussed many times during the course of the past 7 months.
أنا يا رانيا لما بتكلم عن الموضوع ده بقول بأنه أنتوا عندكم حسب ما فهمت، يمكن I'm wrong، حسب ما فهمت أنه أنتوا عندكم لسه مشاورات جارية، ولذلك أنا بقوم بخط النقاط اللي مفترض أنه الناس to push on. إذا كان أنتوا وصلتوا خلاص لمسألة بتاعت أنه this is finalized and there is no talk about it، يبقى الكلام بتاعي ده بيبقى is nonsense. It is useless.
It's signed the policy. So at this point, we are at the point where the policy has been signed by the minister and it's خلاص, it's announced. I think what else can we do? Yeah.
الشيء الآخر أنه برضو عنده تأثير هنا اللي هو أنه البوليسي included other nationalities. ما معروف الأذر ناشوناليتيز ديل يعني كيف التعامل، هل هي بنسبة، هل هو بكيف ما بعرف. في البوليسي هنا على العموم ما قدامي موجودة، it is open. يبقى بالتالي حيكون في إشكالية بتاعت إنه الناس اللي حيجوا من البلدان الأخرى حيستفيدوا من هذا الباسوي أكثر من السودانيين. ايضا بفتكر انه اذا كان ما يعني المساله دي ما خلاص كلير كات، اذا في possibility بتاعت انه to waive the fees، انا بفتكر انه ده ضروري جدا بالنسبه للسودانيين عشان يقدروا يعني يجيبوا ناس. الحاجه الثانيه اللي ملاحظه الموجوده انه يعني الكوميتمنت بتاعت الانكر ما حددت لها فتره زمنيه محدده، وعادة في السبونسرشيبس إذا أخذنا في الاعتبار أنه دي it is like sponsorship بيكون في تحديد للفترة الزمنية اللي بيتم فيها أنه خلاص الشخص بيكون ما مسؤول من الأشخاص الجايين.
سنة واحدة يا أستاذ فعلا. سنة.
إذا حددت سنة يبقى خلاص كويس.
سنة الأولى فقط. أيوة.
طيب سنة واحدة كويس. ده دي بتكون زي السبونسرشيب بتاعت الاورجنايزيشنز الكنائس وغيره. الحاجة الثانية برضو يشار لها انه في مادة بتتكلم عن انه الباثوي may be revoked at any time، يعني في اي وقت قبل ما to reach the cap او to reach the 1 year limit. فده برضو دي بالنسبة لي تعتبر إشكالية. أنا بفتكر دي الملاحظات بتاعتي، وكنت بفتكر أنه يعني المسألة لسه قيد البحث، وبالتالي كنت عايز الناس to push forward. ولكن عموما نشكركم على هذا الجهد.
شكرا جزيلا أستاذ أبو شريع. الصراحة points taken, when I think the points that you raised is aligned with the concerns that's shared by the community as well. So we will go back and advocate more and hopefully نشوف اللي بيحصل شنو. لكن at this point I think we want to focus on the policy at hand that has already been signed and approved and launched، والتقديم لها حيبدأ يوم 27 فبراير. We want to make sure إنه people understand it in and out عشان يقدروا يكون عندهم زي ما بيقولوا قدم السبق بعدين في التقديم، ومن الأول التقديم والابليكيشن بتاعهم يكون مكتمل وما تكون فيه أي مشكلة. الحتة اللي قالها مو أنا هعقب عليها قبل ما أديك الفرصة يا عبير، الحتة بتاعت البوليس كليرنس لو سمحت، لأنه البوليس كليرنس بالذات للناس الديسبليس برا السودان وحتى للناس الموجودين في السودان ما بيتعامل في أي حتة وبياخد زمن وهكتك. يعني تمشي السفارة وناس السفارة سيلد انفلوب فينجر برينتس، تمشي انت تتصرف توصلها والسودان يعملوا بوليس كليرنس، تشوف زول يرجع لك البوليس كليرنس تاني للبلد اللي انت قاعد فيها. This would take time which was one of the reasons احنا we pushed انه الاناونسمنت بتاع البوليسي يحصل بدري شويه عشان ندي فرصه للكوميونتي انها تفهم الفاينانشال ريكويرمنتس، سو يجهزوا نفسهم ماديا. وفي نفس الوقت حاجات زي موضوع البوليس كليرنس دي اللي هي حتكون هيكتيك in terms of process يبدوا فيها من بدري، على اساس انه لما فبراير يجي والتقديم يبدا الناس تكون جاهزه وورقه مكتمل وحاجاتها كلها.
طيب شكرا. الحقيقه انا بس حابب اكد على كلام كل الاخوان والاخوات اللي اتكلموا قبل شويه. البرنامج ده فرصه جميله جدا يتقدم واحنا ممكن نستفيد منها ككوميونتي انه نحل مشاكل اعداد جدا من الناس. البرنامج ده ما نهايه المطاف، ده بالنسبه لنا احنا بدايه المطاف. في بعض الاشياء ملزمه بها، اذا كان ليتر اون في اي ريفيوجيز يتسجلوا في اليونايتد نيشنز، اذا كان في اي برامج اخرى باثويز ثانيه حتكون متاحه. فده ما نهايه المطاف، ده بدايه المطاف. احنا قدرنا نصل عتبه معينه وان شاء الله ككوميونتي ممكن نصل عتبات ثانيه. وفاينلي I just want to second رانيا بالنسبه للشباب يعني dedicated huge effort and time. ما حنقدر يعني نوفيهم حقهم من الكلام. واذا الكوميونتي بتاعنا فيه ناس زي ديل، انا شخصيا ما خايف على الكوميونتي، بالعكس our community is growing maturing، وان شاء الله كل جيل وكل جنريشن حيكون احسن من الجيل. شكرا جزيلا.